Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. We'll give folks a minute to come in and find their seat. Zoom, unlike other groups, seems to usher you in single file, one by one. We can watch the numbers grow. We'll just give everybody a moment here to get into the room. And I'm sure there'll be more people who will join us here. But okay, we're up to a pretty good number already. So we could probably get started. We have a lot to cover in over the next hour. Thank you for joining us here today. This is one of the more fun webinars that we do throughout the course of the year, every year. It's on innovation. It's a unabashed celebration of innovators who are really doing it right and succeeding at a high level. And the goal of the conversation today is to find out what it is that they do. And hopefully by the end of the hour, we'll have some good ideas on what best practices are. So thank you for joining us. Thank you to LexisNexis for sponsoring this event. And I'd like to kick it over to Renee to introduce the speakers that we have for you here today.
Yes, so starting with our host and presenter, we have Gene Quinn. He's a patent attorney and a leading commenter on patent law and innovation policy. He founded IPWatchdog in 1999 and since has been twice named one of the top 50 most influential people in IP. Next, we have Nicholas Valentino. He is the U.S. Head of Customer Success at LexisNexis IP Solutions, where he works with international and Fortune 500 companies to ensure effective deployment of patent analysis, M&A due diligence, portfolio management, and other cases. On our panel today, we have Dr. Meng Zhu. She's the Vice President and Head of IP at InterDigital, where she leads the patent groups responsible for the company's 30,000 plus patent assets. With over 25 years of experience in the patent field, she was previously Chief IP Strategy Officer and Head of Patent Asset Management Team at ZTE USA. Dr. Zhu holds a PhD in electrical engineering from Vanderbilt. Next, we have Dr. Michael Adell. He's the Vice President of IP at Lumus Limited with 30 years of experience in research, development, and intellectual property management. He is co-inventor on over 100 issued U.S. patents and is co-author of over 50 scientific publications. Dr. Adell holds a doctorate in physics from Technion Israel Institute of Technology and is a graduate of the Technion Institute of Management. Next, we have Steve Fisher-Stawinski. He is a program manager for patent strategy and defense and IP external submissions at IBM. Before joining IBM in 2015, he practiced patent prosecution in a small law firm setting. Steve holds a JD with certificate in intellectual property and information technology from DePaul and has a BA in computer sciences from Macalester College in St. Paul. And last but certainly not least, we have Brian Coca. He is an executive director and assistant general counsel in the intellectual property group at Regeneron, where he manages their genetics center worldwide patent portfolio. He is also actively involved with Regeneron's Government Affairs Office in addressing matters of U.S. and international legislation and rulemaking affecting IP protection. Brian earned his law degree from the George Washington University School of Law and his PhD in immunology from Drexel University. So you are in great hands. Back to you, Gene.
Great. Thanks, Renee. And thank you all for joining us and being here to give us your insights today. Really appreciate that. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to start the conversation to get everybody involved at the very beginning to get your baseline thoughts on innovation, what it is that you do, what you think you do best, which I think will give us some insights. And I say that like that because in my experience, the folks that we have on this webinar don't necessarily think they do anything different than others, which they absolutely do. They just have their foot to the pedal and keep moving forward. And it's that which we want to find out how they do that and how they can accomplish that year in and year out. So let's just go in the order in which Renee introduced you. Mang, do you have initial thoughts on this when you were first asked to be on this webinar? What were your thoughts and what did you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, certainly. I believe that a good patent portfolio cannot be success without a good strategy of fundamental research or the other research for the either product or the standards or whatsoever. A good structure of the research will lead to a good structure of the portfolio structure and the management. And a good portfolio is not going to be successful without a very good management of the portfolio, which means we need to work with the inventors very closely. And for example, in the InterDigital, we are having the PMs working very closely with each research project along with the standards development in order to generate successful or a meaningful invention for the contribution to the standard. And also in the prosecution period, and we also work very closely with inventors and patent attorneys to control the quality of the patent portfolio. So that's the, I think, the best practice.
Great, great, good start. Thank you. Mike, your initial thoughts.
So I'll give if we could say, the small company perspective, right? We're just over 100 employees. We're very lean. We've got a high proportion of PhD level engineers and scientists, optical designers, material scientists, and manufacturing experts. And we're a design company. So IP is obviously central to our business space. We share pretty much everything we do with our business partners. So we really need to have things under control in the IP area. More importantly, the guys in our company and the girls, most of them have been around for a long time. Some of our inventors wrote their first patent in augmented reality optics nearly 20 years ago, and they're still at it, right? So they've had rounds of experience. And this brings me to a really critical concept, which forms an essential element in innovation, at least in Lumus. And that's something called preferential attachment. And what that means is that, you know, if once you've got a few wins under your belt, the next wins come just that little bit easier, right? And so if you keep focusing on the same area, right, we have this love affair with a particular IPC subgroup, right? It's called GO2B2701. It's the subgroup of head-up displays. That's what we do. And we just focus, like 80% of our patents are in that subgroup. And so now, after you've got inventors that have been through this area, they've invented, they've been through examination, they've put products out there, we've had design wins, and those products, they know what were the things that made the difference to the customers. And when they're the inventors, right, they generally get a higher proportion of success, right? So if you look at our portfolio, you'll see that it's a very consolidated portfolio. Now, this is a very specific approach. And, you know, the one thing you've got to get right if you're going to take this approach is you've got to pick the right topic. Turns out that worked out right for Lumus, because we started doing augmented, well, what was then called head-up display optics, you know, in the early 2000s. And now it's augmented reality. And so we were on a winner. Maybe we didn't realize it at the time, but now is our opportunity, and we just keep hitting that same place, right? We just keep going back and trying to get ahead of the game, and this is what sort of characterizes the portfolio.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Mike. We're going to dive into a bunch of that as we unfold the hour. Steve, your initial thoughts.
Well, while we're talking about innovation generally, IBM brings the perspective of the big company to the discussion, quite the opposite of Mike's experience at Lumus. We have a large and broad portfolio that is intentionally unfocused. The goals for the business for the patent portfolio have less to do with focus and driving particular technology, and everything to do with supporting all of IBM's businesses as a whole, which includes driving certain kinds of IP relevant deals like joint development, certain semiconductor design deals, and then also the licensing program, which is a component. There's an IP income component, and there's a trading licenses out for licenses in component to deal with the outside world more effectively than without doing any licensing. So in pursuit of that, we have a large portfolio. We have a large patenting program. It's a world-class patenting program. It involves a lot of in-house prosecution, a lot of getting the engineers at every level across all the product groups involved in not only submitting their own inventions, but also reviewing the inventions of others as subject matter experts. It's a scale approach.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Steve. And last but not least, Brian, giving another different perspective here from the life sciences industry. Brian, what are your thoughts on this? Well, I won't pigeonhole your initial thoughts, so I'll start asking questions in a minute here. But so just what do you want the audience to hear as we start?
Yeah, sure. So Regeneron is a pharmaceutical company. And so what we bring to this discussion is representation of a company that's still in its logarithmic growth phase. So every year we're adding thousands of new employees, we're expanding globally. So we're getting there. And what I would say for us is our core mission is where it starts. And that is to use science to improve the lives of patients. And so we use science to drive our innovation. So for Regeneron, intellectual property does not drive the science. The science drives the intellectual property. So we make sure that we emphasize science. We have a core group of scientists that are MDs and PhDs. We were founded by MDs and PhDs. We continue to onboard more and more of those globally. And it is that enables us to leverage the natural innovation areas of these scientists to create those medicines. And so it's science that really drives our core business and drives our intellectual property strategy.
Okay, great. This is a very good start here. Before we go too much further, though, I think what we want to do, Nick, is let people understand a little bit about how and why these companies were identified among the top 100 innovative companies in the world. What I'll say before I turn it over to Nick is LexisNexis has created a metric that really allows every company to quote unquote compete for one of these top 100 recognitions. And it's all about determining what's called innovation momentum. So Nick, you want to take it away?
Yeah, great. Thank you for the intro, Gene. Happy to be here. Really exciting. We get the benefit of what the question of what to get out of this session when it comes to innovation. Part of our tagline, our statement at LexisNexis IP is bringing clarity to innovation. So we do that through our platforms, but we also do that through sessions like this, where we're bringing to light customer stories. We're bringing providing platforms where our users can bring their best practices, their stories of success, and really highlight innovation. And this report is an example of that, where we can really champion and highlight the progress that organizations have made, and specifically help with another goal of ours, which is elevating the role of IP teams within organizations. So this is a way that we can celebrate, we can champion innovation, but also the IP community as well. This is the third year we've done this. Each year just it gets more and more interest within the industry. So it's really exciting to see that our goals of doing this have continued to come to fruition, of being able to, again, share stories and really highlight the impact that IP brings to different corporations, whether small or large, in terms of patent portfolios. And that's really the goal here. Is we wanted to make sure when we were bringing some type of report out that celebrates contributions to the innovation within innovation, that we were including or had a mechanism that included everybody. So we were not just kind of highlighting the same users over and over again, same companies over and over again, and that we were showcasing the contributions of both small, medium, and large corporations. So you'll see on the screen here, kind of the goals of what this report does. And really two of the things that I want to highlight, because we have some examples in the report, and I know these are conversations that I see consistently in individual customer meetings or when we go to various conferences, is, constantly the question of, well, how do you go about that? How did you achieve this? What are you doing in and day out basis that I can bring to my organization to help push innovation, continue to foster creativity, but also to help showcase the value that the IP portfolio brings to an organization. So this type of webinar, this webinar is just one example of ways that we can share those insights, because those are questions that get asked pretty consistently. The other is, how do we showcase the development of smaller portfolios? Make sure that they don't get kind of lost in the shuffle or put to the side when we just talk about the sheer quantity metric of number of patents within a company's portfolio. And this has, year over year, we have a portion of the top 100 list of small companies. Typically about a third of the companies year over year that are on this top 100 list are typically smaller portfolios. And I have a slide that'll show that spread shortly. But it also puts together another example of how we can showcase those smaller companies, but also then show some of the outcomes of the innovation that they brought in order to elevate the kind of the value of their organizations. Is within this report, 3 of the smaller companies have actually been acquired recently. So Mirati Therapeutics by Bristol Myers Squibb, Splunk by Cisco, and Juniper Networks by HPE. So that just kind of showcases, not only is the report picking up, but obviously in terms of a acquisition environment, others saw value in those companies as well. So that is kind of a lead-in example of what the report, the overarching view of the report. Now we'll talk a little about what innovation momentum is, how it came about. So we wanted to make sure we came up with a metric that was transparent. And that, what I mean by that is basically it's reproducible by anyone. So completely transparent in what the methodology is. And this is in line with, for our patent site platform, there is a longstanding methodology in terms of developing or determining the strength of a portfolio, the patent asset index I'll get into next. And we have one of the main things about that we know our user community and the community in general likes is the transparency behind that. So we wanted to make sure that in order, the goal of highlighting innovation, including everyone, putting out a ranking report, we wanted to make sure that we were transparent in the methodology and that this could be applied by anyone else, but also we are going to be looking at portfolios overall, but this can actually then, methodology can be applied within a portfolio. So you can look at certain sections of your portfolio, and I have some examples of that I'll get into for a couple of the companies on this panel, but also it can be applied to any industry, any technology, and any geographical area as well. So it's flexible from that perspective. And the other part was that we didn't want it to be static, kind of alluded that before, but you'll see this report has, from last year, 20 new entrants. IBM is one of the new entrants this year. So we wanted to make sure that we were keeping it fresh, consistently bringing to light the achievements of new companies as long as they met that criteria, and it wasn't kind of a static criteria that would provide the same type of companies. So what you're seeing on the chart here is basically the bubble in the red is an example of a smaller company that is showing smaller movement in terms of the number of patents, that's the x-axis, but more kind of a dynamic jumps or dynamic changes when it comes to their average quality, which is on the y-axis. So this is ways where you have these companies that have smaller number of patents, but they're can be highly innovative, and then create, pretty dynamic change from that perspective. And then the blue bubble is going to be more of an example of our larger portfolios. There you see the visual changes are not as prominent as the red bubble, but however, and that's because it's a little bit more difficult to move the needle. You have to have a higher number of highly innovative patents in order to move the needle as your portfolios get larger. So we also wanted to make sure we're taking that into account too. So it's a good mixture of both type of company portfolios. So I mentioned we based this methodology on our patent asset index. I will mention that a little bit in the calculations we get. I'll give a very high level summary. We have many of you on this panel and also who are attending the webinar have probably heard of the patent asset index. But for those who haven't, I want to provide a bit of a quick overview. So this was developed back in, and you'll see at the footer, there was a academic white paper on this methodology trying to answer essentially, how do we most accurately measure the strength of patent portfolios, taking into consideration different technologies, different portfolio sizes, different regions. So through that research, 2 indicators were identified. One based off of forward citations, basically the rate of how is your patents driving innovation forward, but with known corrections for patent age, patent office practices, as well as technology areas as well. And then market coverage, which is basically how broadly are you protecting your portfolio globally? Where is it active in? And the thought kind of there is, you want to make sure that if you have high quality patents, that there is then the actual enforceability or coverage globally as well. So both of those indicators have an equal weight into the individual strength score of a patent family, which is known as the competitive impact. We will use that in some of the charts as an average, and the average in our database is 1. So just for scaling, when you see some of the charts, and then the overall portfolio strength, or the sum of the strength within a patent portfolio, is the patent asset index. So how we calculate innovation momentum, we're going to use some of those inputs I just went over. We're going to use technology relevance, that forward citation indicator, and we're going to look at it in 2-year increments. And we have another concept that allows for trend analysis in our system called our reporting date. Basically, it's a snapshot of an active portfolio at a calendar year, at the end of a calendar year, and the quality metrics that go along with that. So it allows for kind of the net development of a portfolio or sub-portfolio over time. And what we do is we take a look at where it was currently. So in this case, for this report for 2024, it would have been the end of 2023. And then we look 2 years beforehand at 2021, those reporting dates. And we can see what was the difference. So you can see 2 years ago in this example is that TR1, and then the larger gray column would be TR2 for the end of today's or the end of 2023. Well, that change from 2 years ago to today, well, really, was that expected? Would that be in line as the portfolio is increasing over time or decreasing? Is that in line with what we would think or expect it to be? And that's really where the innovation momentum comes into play, is we're looking at calculating that change in technology relevance. What was expected based off of how the portfolio changed in terms of size? And then anything above that would be the momentum. And essentially, that's what we're looking at in terms of the ranking report, is who are the entities that have those larger momentums, essentially, and who is basically exceeding expectations as we could predict off of our metrics in our system. So that's a quick overview of a few different methodologies. I see some people in the chat are asking about some more detailed documentation, and we are providing that in the chat if you do have any questions concerning that.
What I can say is, before we go on to the charts that show the companies that we have here today to talk to us, is that this is something that has been thoroughly peer-reviewed and vetted, and it's actually relied upon in Europe by regulators when they're trying to determine mergers and consolidation of marketplaces and so forth. So the Europeans have gone through this, and it's all open. All you can, if you want to follow along with the math, you can follow along with the math as well. So it's a pretty well vetted, as well as you're going to get, look at what direction companies are going in, and the size of their portfolios and the quality of their portfolios, and that sort of thing. So if you are interested, take a look at the white paper, and I think you'll be impressed with how thorough it is.
Thanks,
Nick.
Gina. One thing I would add to that is not only some of the M&A work that has been done by some of the regulatory bodies in Europe, but also we have seen the patent asset index either change over from year to year, whether it relates to certain sub technologies or certain filing trends. We've seen that leveraged as a way of the IP departments providing in annual reports their progress and what they are what are they bringing to the table in terms of company development and growth year over year. So that's something we've seen as well too, which is very exciting.
Yeah. So we have a question about how big your portfolio needs to be to get noticed. I mean, I don't know. We're going to show some here. We actually have Lumus is certainly a small company, a much smaller portfolio than certainly IBM. They have a very high quality portfolio, and I think what gets you noticed is positive change.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you see is in this visual interface, I guess is the way to say it, is what you want to be is you want to be in that top right quadrant that nobody occupies, which is where you have a extremely large portfolio with extremely high competitive impact. Nobody's ever there. Okay, so what you then wind up seeing is typically the companies that wind up being on this list are going to be in that first quadrant, very high competitive impact, but the higher your competitive impact, just your portfolio is smaller. You can't have a gigantic portfolio and have every one of your assets be a large competitive impact. So then you see the larger companies, as you do here in that fourth quadrant, really, where they have a good competitive impact, higher than the average, which is 1, and a large portfolio size, which it's very hard to do that, to be high on the competitive impact with a large portfolio. So you see companies in both of those quadrants, and everybody wants to be in the one that, it's the unicorn, the gigantic, the IBM size portfolio with the off the chart competitive impact for every asset you have. That's obviously the goal, and nobody achieves that. So anything else to say about that, Nick, before we?
Yeah, I would just say that kind of unicorn quadrant is, if you dive into portfolios and you look at certain maybe sub technologies, that's where you'll see, and we'll do a lot of visualizations on kind of, hey, these are maybe your key patents to keep, or to keep an eye on in terms of licensing in and out, or any type of litigation activity. But yeah, you're exactly right. When it comes to big, like the actual portfolio itself overall, that is you typically see here, the chart I'm showing, you see the kind of up left quadrant for the smaller companies, and then the bottom right and to the bottom left for larger portfolios as they develop over time. And typically the trend analysis for companies as they add to their portfolio over time, you're going to see that competitive impact kind of wane a little bit, but it does pick up and can right itself more into the positive aspect as pruning efforts, and as you get into potentially new technologies that are groundbreaking start to mature, and then the citations pick up, and then you can see those turns. Yeah, that everyone's kind of shooting for that one quadrant, hard to do or hard to obtain from a overall portfolio perspective, but in an individual level or sub-technology level, it is possible. And those are kind of your visual cues for what are from a strategic insight perspective within a portfolio, those are the areas you can look at to identify high performers or high or low performers from a quality perspective.
Okay. So why don't we put up one of the first, here we go. This just shows this is the entire 100 here, those
This
grayed out.
exactly. This is the entire 100 gives kind of a scale for the companies that are on the panel here, where they fall in terms of that, the quadrants and the overlay. So we have a good distribution here of, the larger companies, mid-size down to small, and that again, this mechanism, the innovation momentum calls out and provides that spotlighting for everyone involved, any patent holders regardless of size. And again, mention it there is, from a small perspective, there are about 30% of the top 100 year over year have been on this list. So we are giving a call out and highlighting their achievements, essentially. But this kind of gives you that spread of where, in terms of size and average quality, you see as portfolios get, as we just mentioned, as portfolios get bigger, there's typically that average quality comes down because you have a greater distribution of patents on both ends of the spectrum, high quality, low quality, and it is a little bit harder to move that needle. So this gives kind of an idea of positioning for the 4 companies on this panel, where they fall in terms of those 2 metrics across the top 100.
Okay. Great.
This just gave an example of kind of the development over the past couple of years of each of the panelists. We'll get into some specifics for each of them, kind of the trajectory. So we see, for instance, InterDigital, we were just talking kind of beforehand, the decrease of the portfolio over the years, but the average, what's being maintained, is of high quality and really important to their business. So you can see that uptick in the average quality. Lumus, there is that slight increase in the portfolio size. Again, highly focused, as Mike mentioned, in certain technology areas. As they grow, there's a real emphasis on making sure that maintaining the patents that come are relevant to the business and impactful to the business. So you can see how that maintains a high level of quality in terms of the metrics. And then Regeneron, as Brian mentioned, is growing over time. Increases in both employees, but also innovation in certain areas. You can see as that portfolio is growing, there's kind of, the ebbs and flows, but kind of staying around the same size from an average quality perspective. And then IBM is an example of, there is an uptick in the average quality, but as you get to those larger portfolios, the visual cues are not as predominant to identify, but there are those slight upticks, and what goes into that is something I'm sure Stephen will talk about as we get into more of the panel discussion of how they achieved that. What was this shift in strategy, essentially?
So, and this is probably a good time to bring the panel back into this and get an idea from each of you as to what it is that your folks are working on, and how you in the case of Lumus, stay 10x above the average for the most part in terms of your quality, which is remarkable. And Regeneron, although you're getting bigger, the quality is staying the same. Not easy to do that at all. That means that each new asset really has to be even higher quality than some of the older assets. So guys, and Mike, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on how it is that you're able to maintain such a high quality?
Well, a competitive impact's got these 2 components, and we do both things, right? So the first component is the technology relevance, which is citations. And the way we keep getting very high citation counts is that the team is very, very focused on a very specific technology, and they've been doing it for an extensive period of time. And we're able to sort of keep the inventors on the areas where we know they're going to be that one step ahead of the things that are coming out, because of our very intimate knowledge of the optical domain in augmented reality. And because they're doing this over multiple cycles, comes back to this term that I used before, preferential attachment, right? You know, you look at a soccer team, or you know, the guys who are scoring more goals, they keep getting selected for the next game. And so they get further and further and further ahead. And it's the same thing in filing patents, right? Once you've got a team that has had multiple successes, they've already got a smell of what success is. They know what they're looking for. They know the thing which is going to get them that one step ahead of the filings of the competitors. And when you do that, you just, you know, you get the citation counts, you know, quite rapidly build up. And that's really what's lifting the competitive impact on the citation side, on the tech relevance. The other thing we do is, because we're a consumer-focused company, we file broadly. We file in multiple jurisdictions. Now, everybody knows that's kind of a risky business, because it means you've got a lot of examiners looking at your patents, right? On the other hand, when you expand the market coverage, right, then you get rewarded for that in competitive impact in this, and for good reason, because it means that, you know, if you ever do have to go to battle, if you ever have to go into litigation, you can open up multiple fronts if you've got deep enough pockets, right? So we also gain points on the market coverage, and that's really, it's the combination of those two factors that's lifted the competitive impact so high.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's very impressive. And Brian, Regeneron, what you have going on here is also very impressive as well. From pharmaceutical company being so high on this list. I mean, a lot of what you guys do, just unfortunately, nobody's fault, just doesn't pan out. So how do you manage to stay so relevant even as the portfolio is growing, and it's such a highly unpredictable area?
Yeah, I'm going to borrow something from a car rental commercial that I've seen. You've seen the company Sixt, which says that you don't want a car, you want the car, right? Mm-hmm. And I think from what Regeneron's perspective is, we don't want a patent, we want the patent. And what I mean by that is we have very high quality subject matter expert patent attorneys who embed with their scientists. And I started earlier in the conversation that science drives our company. And so that's where it all begins. And so we have high quality science experts, patent attorneys who embed with these scientists, and we understand the business. We understand their science. And so we can be discriminatory. We understand sort of where the innovations lie. We understand our own business and how those innovations benefit the business. And that can be at various levels. And it's not just related to the therapeutics. We have computational and bioinformatics patents that benefit our analytical tools. We have manufacturing patents for our manufacturing processes. We have all kinds of patents related to scientific analytical processes and developments and the like. And so we make sure that our IP portfolio keeps us competitive by covering all aspects of our business. We're not just a therapeutics company, we're an innovative company, and we innovate from soup to nuts in our entire pipeline. And so just to tie it all together, right, it's keeping an eye on the quality of the science, make sure that we have quality innovations that protects all aspects of our business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the science leading has got to be very, very important. And I think that we see a theme there already to some extent with what Mike is saying, and what you're saying is that science or technology has to be the focus. And Meg, you during the when we were in the green room, you were agreeing, not probably better to call what InterDigital does is technology than science, in the way that people might think that, you know, of what, for example, Regeneron's doing. But the one thing that strikes me here too, looking at this, the portfolio size has gotten a little bit less, but it has this remarkably gone up, which would seem to me that you guys are figuring out what it is that you need to keep and what it is you need to focus on, which is also a critical component so that you're not wasting the budget. Nobody can do everything they want to do. You have to be
Yeah.
smart about it, right?
Yeah. Oh, actually, I want to pull back a little bit about to continue what I talk about research strategy. I truly believe research strategy put us into a technology relevance index such high. So InterDigital has a long history of research capabilities in the technology area, including wireless and video technologies. And currently we added on AI. And our research on the cutting edge technologies started at a very early stage, as we call the pre-standards research projects. So this is a bring out a foundation of setting up the research and the inventions for the upcoming standard. For example, the 5G, right? We are listed very high in terms of quality and quantity in the top 5 by the LexisNexis report. So why we can be that, because we started at the very early stage of like as an extension to the LTE research. It's 5G started at around 2006. So this brings us a very good foundation for what the 6G will going forward. And then we will fill in during the 5G development cycles, I mean the standards development cycles, we made a lot of contributions to the 5G standards because we have an early foundation. Then we can fill in continuous research for the 5G areas. So that's how we have a very high index, whatever you call it, relevance, technology relevance index. Mm-hmm. So this is a research. Of course, it will deal with the patent filing, right? So our patent filing really was the strategy was created around the research projects. So for the pre-standards research, so we try to file the patents broader, like using the broader terms, broader claims, and a broader. When it gets into the working items in the standard, they will try to narrow down and to be very specific invention towards one certain working items. And then we will continue our effort of doing the quality control with more of the essentiality control towards in the prosecution, and to make sure it will end it a high quality standards essential patents. As I told you before, that our InterDigital's patent portfolio majorities are standard essential patent portfolio in the cellular area, and as well as the video codec area. So this is what brings us. The second very important thing is the coverage of our portfolio, right? In terms of foreign coverage. So we constantly adjust our foreign filing. Sorry about, I'm a little bit nervous. Foreign filing strategy. So we look at the market, we look at the manufacturer facilities and all the stuff. So we try to broaden our foreign filing towards the different countries, regions, and all stuff. It will still help us to be in a good coverage in terms of getting into this reporter's focus area. Mm-hmm. Of course, what we do is not because we want to get on the report. It's right, more, right. This is our common practice for manage our portfolio. Another thing is try to bring the knowledge of patent professionals in the technology area, so we can clearly describe the technology in a more clear and correct domain. So we will line up our portfolio managers along with the working items or technology areas. And also we have our in-house counsels, outside counsels are working very closely with our inventor group, and also in order to control the quality and during the prosecution period.
Yeah. Yeah, no, good stuff. Now, one of the things that you brought up is about InterDigital isn't just trying to be on this particular report, and that's maybe a good segue to bring Steve in with IBM, because famously, I think most people in the industry know IBM has had a little bit of a change of philosophy here over the last couple years, and IBM was affirmatively trying to be the largest U.S. patenting company year after year, and that's not true anymore, but it doesn't seem to have affected, and it seems to have increased. The change has benefited them based in this independent review of their overall portfolio. Steve, what can you tell us about the shift in the IBM philosophy and what it is meant for the company?
Well, thanks, Gene. Yes, so it's only just over a year ago that our head of research, Dario Gil, published in Fortune that we're not pursuing what we called patent leadership anymore. And patent leadership was specifically defined as topping the Intellectual Property Owners Association organization, sorry, IPO, the IPO top 300 list for most US issuances per year. And it's got some interesting quirks to that particular metric. It's only looking at the US, only looking at what issues in a year, and it doesn't look at families. It looks at just number of issuances. And when that was the metric and the goal, you have a strategy that starts with, we need to file X number per year to ensure that we'll top that list. And then how are we going to find the disclosures, and how are we going to find the continuations, because it's got to be both, to make up that number. And once you stop pursuing that, you can make a more normal decision about what's good technology, what claims should be pursued. You can, devote some prosecution resources to actually fighting for good claims instead of just taking whatever issues. And it's a pretty recent change, right? So Dario announces this last year. That's based on decisions taking a year before that, so early 2022. And those patents that are resulting of applications filing in 2022 start to issue in 2023, and just that beginning of patents that are filed under the new strategy and starting to issue, or patents that were already in the pipeline, but their prosecution decisions are starting to be taken under the new strategy. There's enough volume in the IBM portfolio that that's enough to move the needle for innovation momentum, where there's less, frankly, junk getting issued. And of course, we've heard from Gene, we've heard from Nick, that when you have a very large portfolio, not everything can be very high competitive impact. Some things are going to get ignored. They're not going to get any forward citations. Some things are going to issue with, claims that aren't necessarily going to be driving any deals of any kind. You want to make sure you have the good stuff in the mix, but it is a mix. And at the same time is sort of recognizing there's going to be variance of quality. You can also say you don't need a lot of complete chaff, which is what you end up having when you try to hit a particular target that's beyond the innovation capacity of the company. So even if you have a very large company with a lot of engineers and a lot of very smart people who are inventing, working on things, they're going to generate a certain amount of ideas. If you decide ahead of time you need to hit a certain number of filings that's more than that, then you're going to start producing air. And when you stop doing that, you're going to improve, which is what happened.
Good, great. So we have a question that came up in the chat that I've been following, and Lewis says, it seems like getting the key innovators within the company involved and excited about the patenting process would be important for innovation momentum. how do you achieve that? That's the question. How do you get everybody to buy in to the vision? And this maybe gets us into a conversation about culture. And Mike, let's go back to you. I mean, one of the things that you said right before we went on is you have to know who you are. Can you? I think that may be a part of making sure everybody is on the same team in the same boat, rowing in the same direction. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, so if you're in Lumus, right, you know that what you want to do is you want to change the world by bringing augmented reality optics into the consumer domain. And that, you know, we have one very specific focus, which is getting the optics to be they're currently the rate limiting thing. They're the thing that's preventing augmented reality from really becoming a consumer product. And everybody in the company is just really passionate about making that happen. And you know, people realize that they've got to invest a significant amount of their time into writing disclosures and prosecuting the disclosures. It's part of their job. And it's you know, because it's the way for our company to get ahead as a design company. We share intimate details with our manufacturing partners. We have to patent. And so everybody understands that, right? They're all talking with people outside the company all day long. And they know that they've just got to get their ducks in a row. And it's just inbuilt into the culture of the company. And I'll just add one more thing that I think was consistent between all of us who talked today, and that is, I think each one of us, even though the strategy is a little different, the strategy in terms of IP is what I call holistic. And what holistic means is you're not looking at the strategy on a patent by patent basis. It's not a reductionist approach of going, this will protect this product, that will protect that, right? Each one of us has our own holistic perspective. We see the portfolio as representing us as companies, right? Who we are. And when we develop our strategy in IP, we look at at ourselves and say, who do we want to present? What do we want to present to the world? And that's I think, an emerging use case of patent portfolios. It's not just about being able to litigate.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, it's about an identity, you know, and Brian, I think, and maybe we can get Regeneron portfolio up here broken down into pieces. You guys do a lot of innovation in a lot of different spaces. There's obviously some very specific focuses that you have, and what do you say to this? Having an identity, knowing everybody's rowing in the same direction. I mean, how important is that to what you've done in the success of Regeneron?
Yeah, so I think first, and we're unique because we're a pharmaceutical company, and so I can say this, is that foremost, what really gets us up every day and coming into work is knowing that we're helping patients' lives, right? And routinely, we have real patients come in and give us talks about how they have benefited from our medicines, right? When you learn that someone's blindness has been halted, right? Or a deaf child can hear for the first time, right? I mean, those things are very, very powerful and very, very moving stories, and they keep it going. It's sort of, why do we come into work? Why do we innovate? And why do we innovate all over the place? Is because we want all patients, whatever their affliction, to benefit from what we do. And so in that respect, you know, we're starting from a very firm foundation that we know why we have to come into work and we know what we're moving for. And so that itself really drives sort of how we create those innovations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, so how do you, because I mean, I don't think that your Regeneron's portfolio is as broad, wide in area as IBM, but I suspect you're probably a little bit broader than Lumus, who has a very specific direct focus. How do you know, like, when it's going to be worthwhile to pursue one of these areas that, you know, it's not your organic chemistry, it doesn't fit in the pharma, which is essentially 70% of your portfolio, but it's still going to be something you're going to proceed with anyway?
Well, It's because we have organic chemistry can be used to tie to therapeutics that get stuck on a biomolecule, right? So we're innovating in the organic chemistry because not necessarily we're creating an organic chemistry drug, but that we're using organic chemistry to enhance the biotechnology. So that's why we might innovate there. And so we have an innovation pipeline that starts with our drug target discovery and then moves into various things that support therapeutic development, to the therapeutics themselves, to the way we administer our drugs, to the way we manufacture our drugs, to the way we package our drugs. And so because we have a very large pipeline of how we manufacture things and how they are generated, I think that gives us the license to innovate in all of these things that are shown in this circle here, right? So you're going to see things all over the place. And so naturally, because the science is solid and because we're working toward a solid therapeutic, we're going to see, IP naturally generate in all of these different areas.
Okay, good. And Mang, what can you tell us about the InterDigital's pipeline? I know it's mostly SAP related in the telecom area, but not exclusively, right?
Yeah. So I want to spend a little more time talking about detail about our research and how we do it, and also how we file patents and stuff. Just a little bit more. So our research, like the previous standards research, is not only InterDigital doing it, and we also collaborate with different universities. And also in that particular environment, it's more of a cultural invention instead of like doing the research that may not really target into so restrictly to certain Gs. I mean, like 4G, 5G, 6G. It's more towards really a technology, right? So this is one thing. The other thing also in the standards development period, we're also working with all the industry leaders in order to push our research results and into the standards. And in the end, we are not only do that, we also collaborate with some of the device manufacturers and trying to push our innovations to be realistic, can be implemented. So the whole research pipeline will end up a pipeline of the research patent filings pipeline, right? So as I already mentioned, that the long-term research already generates a foundation, a lot of patents which sets the foundation, but the standards research will create a lot of SEPs. But in the end, there are a lot of working relationship with implementers will create certain kinds of non-essentials. So if you look at our licensing projects, it's not only our SEPs will making contribution, our non-SEPs also making a lot of contributions in terms of the licensing, for example, our TV licensing program. So in our, as me as a patent person in the patent portfolio management, we all go through these different stages and we look our portfolio as a whole. So we will classify our portfolio to be different use and also so in the different technology area. So I think it's a little bit away from your question. So your question is about our portfolio, the pipeline, right?
Yeah. I mean, but I think you answered it in some respects, right? I mean, you probably don't have the singular pipeline, and in that regard, you guys are probably a little bit maybe closer to IBM certainly than you would be to Lumus, I would think.
So because we are technology-wise, we are more focused on the wireless communications and the video. So our pipeline more towards any technology area in that boundary. Although we have some user interface patterns or maybe applicable to the device which has the communication capability, things like that. Or the video applications, as of a TV, you have user interface to control it, things like that.
Yeah.
In
So,
order, yeah.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
So I was just because we're running low on time. We're going to go just a little bit over here, but Steve, I wanted to get your thoughts on pipeline because I think that you are you probably have multiple pipelines might be the best way to think of it rather than a singular pipeline, right?
Yes, Gene, that's probably the best way to think of it. It's one pipeline and multiple tech areas across the company that different business units are interested in, and different other stakeholders like research and licensing. It's one pipeline, but it has many parts, I think, is the best way to understand that.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm cognizant that, we're running past the lunch hour for people, or that time that we had told them that we'd be doing this. And I want to give every one of you an opportunity to give your final thought here, though. Like, what one thing do you, before we start to lose the audience to go back to work, what one thing do you want them to take away from this presentation? Steve, let's go with you first.
The one thing to take away is, IBM is back. Look for us to be topping charts or showing up on charts that are other than most U.S. issuances per year. If it's from IPWatchdog or LexisNexis or anyone else, if it's quality related, look for improvements, and hopefully we can do some intellectual property business.
Great. Thanks a lot. Brian, how about you? What's the one takeaway message you want people to leave with today?
Think outside the box.
Yeah, that's a good way to do this, right? Because you never know where innovation is going to lead you. And then that's why younger people innovate more and better, right? They're not stopped the same way because they don't know the absolute rules that can't be violated. They ask why not sometimes, and that's very critical. Thanks, Brian. Zhang, let's go, or Mang, rather. Mang, let's go to you, please.
Okay, I would like to, because I'm very new to the InterDigital, right? So I would like to end my this panel with my impression of InterDigital. To me, I would like to say that's very important to me, actually, to seeing that. I think InterDigital is a very good actual research company, and it's a leading research company in the area we are focused on, which is cellular and video, and going forward will be AI. And also we have top researchers in these areas, and in my patent team we have very professional patent professionals, and I'm very happy to work with them. And I will be working very hard to improve the patent quality and keep us on any of the top company list.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot, Mang. And last but not least, Mike, what is your takeaway message for the audience?
I'll just give it in 2 words: preferential attachment. So I recommend the readers, the participants in the webinar, just go and read about that concept. And what it's about is, once you start getting to the top of the list, it's easier to stay there, right? Once you start hammering out good patents in a specific area, right, it's easier to just keep hitting the top and staying at the top. And so you've got to keep the team together and make sure that they just keep focusing on the same thing. And eventually this preferential attachment kicks in, and you get right up to where you see Lumus is.
Is that another way to say, know what you do and do what you know? I mean, that's, yeah,
Nice.
it seems like what you need to know. And so my final thought is just that, is I think, the more you know about who you are and what you do and what your mission is, it's easier to incentivize people. It's easier to get everybody rowing in the same direction and get buy-in. We didn't really have time to talk about culture today, but I think that plays a big role in culture. And if you have an innovative culture where everybody really feels like they're rowing in the same direction, good things can't not happen. They will just
love to come back and talk about that, Gene.
Yeah, absolutely. I love to dive deeper into a lot of these topics, which we will do throughout the rest of the year here. But I really appreciate everybody being here. Nick, do you have a final thought for us?
I just hope this provides a mechanism or vehicle for anyone who's attended this webinar or to spread about. If you read the report and got it in our emails, that you have the ability to use this as a conversational piece within your organization to really highlight the achievements that your IP team has made. Because I know sometimes it's hard to quantify. So hopefully we're providing that mechanism for you to do that.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for a wonderful conversation, and thank you all in the audience for spending a portion of your day here with us. We'll make sure everybody gets the slides. We'll make sure that everybody gets access to the white paper that was mentioned. And I hope you have a good day, and we hope to see you again, but that's all we have for today. So bye for now, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
folks.
Gene. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, my fellow panelists.
Thanks, Renee.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you.